Hello and welcome to another episode of the Winging It F1 podcast. We've just had the Spanish Grand Prix and I think it's safe to say it wasn't the best Grand Prix we've ever had. It wasn't quite a classic. Lewis Hamilton from pole position, winning for the 88th time, I believe just three behind Michael Schumacher's record of 91 victories. He's also beaten Schumacher's record, or podium record, of 155. And with me to talk about all this, I've got Freddie Coates. Unfortunately, we've just got two of us this week because Adam has gone off for a holiday somewhere in the UK. He's not gone to Spain. Yeah, and
or
he's
France.
within the UK. Yeah, or France. It was a quarantine. But yeah, he'll be back in a couple of weeks. For now, it's just me and Freddie. Freddie, what did you make of the race? Mercedes, Verstappen, Mercedes, Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas. It's the top three.
Yeah, you can look at it in two ways. You can look at it as the kind of fairly tedious race that the fight for the lead was, or you can look at it as just Hamilton just got a handle ready on this championship, and he just did another masterclass performance. He only missed out on topping one session this weekend, and that was FP1, because he led every lap, didn't get fastest lap but got pole, led every lap, led every qualifying session, led two practice sessions. I think he was unstoppable this weekend. As much as everyone tried to hype up Verstappen over last night, it was one of those masterclass weekends that you get from Hamilton that it's just so easy to be bored at, but also so worthy of praise.
Yeah, definitely. And the tyre pressures weren't as high. The harder tyres definitely helped Mercedes. We didn't see as much blistering. So do you think it's safe to say that Silverstone 2, Verstappen winning was a one-off probably, and this is more of a normal race of what's going to come this season?
I think I think it was a one-off because I think the majority of tracks are going to have the C1, C2, C3 compounded tyres. I think that's what we had this weekend.
Yeah.
Whereas the middle, the 2, 3, 4 sets that were there last week seemed to be a bit more favoured to Red Bull. Max was able to keep a few tabs on Hamilton at the early phases of the race on the softest compound, and later on in the race, Bottas couldn't keep up when he was on the softer compound. So on the softer rubber, the Red Bull is good, but on the harder rubber, I think the Mercedes has really got the legs. But I do think the Mercedes is still the better car.
They all started on the soft tyres, and Verstappen really struggled towards the end of the first stint, didn't he? He dropped from about 2 seconds to nearly 10 seconds. So I'm not even sure if Red Bull are better in that aspect. For me, if Hamilton is leading after the first lap, he's near unbeatable. I mean, I'm trying to remember the last time he led after the opening lap and he didn't win. I can't remember when that was, and it's kind of a scary thing. Can you remember, Freddie?
I'm thinking back. Oh, man. Okay, so I'm thinking back to the end of 2019. So we had Abu Dhabi, Brazil, he didn't win, but Verstappen was on pole. He was in like 5th in the grid for that one. Yeah. Did he lead at the end of lap 1 in Kosa? No, he was like 4th. Oh, man. Kosa was before that. Suzuka? No, Bottas won that.
I mean, it says it all, doesn't it, really, when we can't
Germany. It was Hockenheim.
Germany.
Hockenheim last year.
Yes.
It was Hockenheim. Because Verstappen led in Hungary, and then the Ferraris had the pole positions for the next few races. So yeah, it was Hockenheim 2019. It was the last race Lewis Hamilton led the first lap of and didn't win.
Yeah, incredible, really. And I think Hamilton's biggest asset is not necessarily qualifying. Yes, he's got the most pole positions, which is incredible. But in the race, he's got on top of these Pirelli tyres. And I remember back in 2011 and 2012, when people said, oh, he kills the tyres, he can't manage them, he's rubbish, he just goes too fast. But then look now, he's probably the best in the field still, and managing his rubber. And ultimately, that's what's winning him these races, because to win by the margin he had, it's just just crazy. And he's in the dream team as well. It's just, I think he's all set for a 7th world title. I think that's fair to say, Freddie.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about records all year this year, weren't we? We alluded to it in pretty much every podcast we've done. He's got 3 wins until he's matching Schumacher, 4 wins till he's the best of all time. He's the best of all time podiums. He is the best of all time pole positions. He is soon going to presumably be equaling the best of all time in terms of championships. I don't think we can ignore that. And I think Lewis Hamilton is the greatest of all time. But that's obviously a debate for another time. But yeah.
Oh, bold.
I'm a Schumacher fan. Well, I grew up as one. So
that's definitely, it's definitely something we can argue about for another episode, perhaps. Do you think Hamilton has any weaknesses, really? Because he's good with his tyres. If anything, I'm maybe qualifying because I don't know, actually.
Not at the moment. Last year, perhaps, but I think that was just because of the second half of the season being so close in qualifying. I think Hamilton is on, 92 pole positions now.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think you can call that qualifying weakness from whatever 240 odd races. So weakness, none that he's not ironed out. Like you say, used to be a little bit wayward on the tyres, but he's not at all now. He used to get a bit hot-headed with McLaren, but he's definitely allowed to be himself at Mercedes, and that absolutely plays into his strengths. Sometimes, obviously, he can be a little bit. There's the meme of my tyres are gone, and he can. I don't want to say moan because it's not a moan. It's more of a therapy process for him, just to sort of, relay to the team what's going on, and
I think it's a
to
tactic,
speak about it. Yeah,
I think
he seems to have it all under control, even if he thinks his tyres are gone. And I think psychologically, he's in the best frame of his mind. That he said on the final lap of the radio, he didn't really celebrate across the line, and I was looking to see if he was like his head in his hands or something as he came across the line, but he wasn't. And then his radio came up, and with Bono with his classic "Get in there, Lewis," and Hamilton was just going on about how much he was in the zone, and that's godlike. That's absolutely brilliant. And I just think you could just tell he was just. They didn't show anything that went wrong with that race. I mean, normally when there's a driver in the lead, if they go wide or have a lockup, they'll show it. Nothing happened with that with Hamilton. It was just the only.
He went over Romain Grosjean's little thing, didn't he?
He went over a bit of Romain Grosjean's floor. He went over that, and I thought he was the one pitting at the end when they pitted Bottas, because I thought maybe he's got a slow punch, but he didn't. Well, yeah, that would have been nip and tuck with Verstappen at the pit exit. But the only thing that went wrong for Hamilton was his rear left was slightly sticky in his first pit stop. That was it.
Yeah, and even that wasn't his fault because he can't get out of the car and change his own tyres.
It was still a 4.5 second pit stop. So obviously, that's so sloppy, and he's going to lose the race. But he didn't.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton taking the win. Then Verstappen was second. He maximised his result. Really, I mean, what is there to say about Max? He complained on the radio more than usual this race. I'm not sure why. He seemed very frustrated at something, even though second was a really good result for him.
I think it's another mindset thing. About lap 10, he was trying to basically realised he wasn't going to win the race and kind of thought, well, I'm going to try and do the best I can. And rather than getting stressed about it, and rather than my team getting stressed about it, we're just going to absolutely hammer home this advantage we got on Bottas, which was the track position. And they did that. I think that was all they did. They've basically just beat Bottas, and rather than focusing on trying to do something different, to beat Hamilton, or trying to be a bit quirky like Red Bull are good at, rather than losing second to third by trying to get first, they wanted to keep second, because he is second in the championship going into this race, and he's only extended that gap to Bottas.
I think there's half a chance Verstappen could even beat Bottas to second this year, because Bottas, today he didn't get the best of starts. He couldn't quite get into the slipstream of Hamilton. Verstappen just had an overlap. Do you think there was any way Bottas could have taken second today?
Yeah, you lost it at the start. If he had lost second to Verstappen, I think maybe because he would have been able to stay closer during the opening phases, but he was always on the back foot when he didn't get past Stroll immediately on like lap 3 or something, because Stroll did a pretty good job to keep him there till lap 5. Bottas did a okay job to not get into a rut and get stuck behind him, which is very easy to do when you've got a car with the same power unit in front of you. But Bottas just lost the race there. I think he did very well to not get taken by Perez and Albon on the first lap. He just completely dropped it on the first lap, unfortunately. I think from there on in, it was a hard task for him to come back to second. And we've seen quite a few returns to the podium for Bottas this season. I mean, Austria 2, he had to catch up with Verstappen. He only managed to so close to the end. Yeah, that's a wet qualifying, but he should have been on the front row from a wet qualifying, still in that car. In Hungary, he got his NAF start. He still came through to third. Yeah, he should have been a bit more feisty at Silverstone 1, and I don't know. He was the lead Mercedes driver for Silverstone 2 for the majority, but apart from that, I don't really know what Bottas has got.
He could have gone on a medium tyre for his final stint today, but even then, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why Mercedes went on the softs.
I agree.
That could have given him more of a fighting chance, perhaps.
It's another example of the mental capacity that Lewis Hamilton's got, that he can think to say, actually, no, you know what? No, I don't agree with this. Rather than Bottas going, copy our box, Hamilton go, actually, no, I don't think we should box. I think we should go on to the medium. I've got a bit of life for an extra lap in this tyre for us to debate this. I've got a gap, crucially, for that kind of conversation. But that's just Hamilton just being more switched on, more ability to switch on than Bottas. I mean, people always talk about the extra room in these guys' minds to think about how to control these cars, how to strategize a race while also hitting those apexes, hitting those breaking points, managing those tires all the time. It's kind of like Schumacher and Senna. You could just have a conversation about how their kids were while they were driving around the track. It's that kind of thing. So I think it's another. Bottas's flaws are showing examples of Hamilton's strengths.
Yeah, something I noticed. It could just be a coincidence, this, but the last 3 races, Bottas in the opening stints, he seems to do pretty good. He's keeping up with Hamilton, but in Silverstone 1, before the tyre blowouts, he started to drop back in the last 20, 30 laps of the race. In Silverstone 2, he also had a not so good final stint and was overtaken by Hamilton at the end. And it seemed today again, he couldn't really do anything in that final stint. I'm just wondering why in the second half of the races Bottas is dropping off. It could just be a coincidence and the others pick up the pace. So I just thought it was a weird thing I've noticed in the last recently. Sorry,
I think it's coincidence because Bottas is good on low fuel.
Yeah,
I mean, his qualifying margin to Hamilton is no fluke. He's the majority of time is within a tenth to Lewis in qualifying. So it's not like he's finding the car harder to control when it's a bit more skatey and a bit lighter at the end of the race. I think it's just a coincidence, frankly. Because he has been able to close in later stages as well in previous races.
And I think one thing we didn't talk about in the last podcast was Bottas has signed a new 1-year deal to stay with Mercedes next season. Hamilton and Mercedes themselves haven't signed anything for next year. Quickly, Freddie, do you think Bottas is the right choice for Mercedes? They couldn't really have gone with anyone else, really.
Unless they could have coaxed out a top driver like Verstappen or probably someone like a Ricciardo, actually. But I don't really think there's anyone else who can do a better job than what Bottas is doing. If you look at the qualifying, for instance, if he just gets a good start, then Bottas is doing the best job. It's just today he got a poor start. And I think you're not going to get anything better out of a Russell or an Ocon in that seat. Yeah. I think I think Bottas is the right choice in terms of keeping the team dynamic, keeping the reliable option. I mean, we'll probably have a debate about best number 2 driver in the future, whether it's a Barrichello or DC and Eddie Irvine. We don't know, but
yeah, and I think people might say it's a boring decision, but it's the right decision because it's the dream team. Why why have a driver change and just I mean, Bottas is doing so much better than other number 2 drivers are doing at the moment. Bottas is doing all the right things. He's pushing Hamilton in qualifying, and when Hamilton isn't quite on it, he does take the win. So yeah, I completely agree. Bottas remaining is the right thing. It's just
there's always the fear of a young gun.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
The dynamic in Ferrari is testament to that. I mean, when they signed Charles Leclerc to partner Sebastian Vettel, it was the right decision. It was the right decision to go for youth, to go for an up-and-coming talent, but it completely ruins the mindset of half of that Ferrari garage and one of those drivers. So I think Mercedes know what an awful team dynamic is like. The Rosberg-Hamilton years allude to that completely. And this is a team that has worked fantastically and has, not put any feet wrong in the past few years, and completely has. I mean, anyone wants to work there as a business. It's got trendy startup mixed with corporate cleanliness and sleekness. So it's just it's just a well-oiled machine with the system they've got going right now.
Definitely. And behind the top 3, everyone was lapped, which it hasn't happened since Austria 2018, apparently.
Oh, really?
Which is just shows how much of a difference there is between the top 3 and 4th place. What do you make of that? Because it's not great. It's not a great look for F1, is it?
You get exaggerated gaps on these kind of tracks.
True. Yeah.
Tracks with sort of lots of slow speed acceleration zones is where you're going to get, like Hungary, for instance. You get massive gaps at Hungary as well, because the gaps with the accentuation of the gap comes from the cornering speed, and because so many sort of medium speed corners really lends itself to a really, really well functioning car. So the gaps are always going to be exacerbated in this kind of track. So I think on paper it's awful for F1, but even if we had really close cars, the gaps at this kind of track would be big.
Yeah, shall we talk about the track then? Some people were saying, I hate Barcelona. Why does F1 go there? Do you think it should have a place on the calendar?
I'm conscious of everyone sort of jumping on a bandwagon of get rid of this track, because we seem to have that. If we have a boring race at any track, there's going to be questions raised about this racetrack kind of thing. There is always that kind of knee-jerk reaction, but every year Barcelona crops up. I remember the first time I watched a race in Barcelona, and it was like, well, this is a track that's famously really hard to overtake at, so teams are going to be really focusing on strategy. Back then it was refueling and that kind of thing, but and it's just a bit like, my first initial thought was, why do we come to these tracks where everyone knows you can't overtake? Is it convenience that there's a racetrack here? And that seemed to be what it is. It's convenience that there's a race in Spain, if I'm honest. That's why we go to Barcelona. We still had the Catalan national anthem, so we're not going to get into that again.
Yeah. So do you think it should stay on the calendar then? That's what you're saying.
I wouldn't mourn its loss. Okay,
that's interesting. For me, if it's going to be a testing circuit, which it is, I don't think it should be on the calendar. If it's not a testing circuit, then yeah, it's fine. But because they go over there in testing, I just don't think it really works. Everyone, knows the track. It doesn't. It's just a bit. It lacks something for me. I don't know if that final.
It lacks a character to drive as well. It lacks a character to drive. At least if you went to not Valencia, Jerez. At least if you went to Jerez, another Spanish circuit that was previously a testing track, but as they've limited, not so much anymore. That track is a brilliant track to drive on. It is narrow, doesn't necessarily lend itself to racing in that much, but they've taken out the random chicane they put in for 1997 now. So that's at least a track that the car looks good on, and a car probably looks pretty fun to drive on comparatively to Catalonia, which as a track to me just looks a bit sort of off camber, a bit medium speed. It doesn't really advertise a Formula One car so well.
No. Yeah. I think, you know, I think ages ago they changed the final sector, didn't they? They put in the chicane, got rid of the fast corner. If they went back to the old layout, had the 2 fast right-handers, with the cars now, if they could manage to go flat out easily in the race, that might help create more overtaking, perhaps, if they can stay flat out and then have more of a slipstream. But even then, the overtake will be pretty easy. So
there would still be, the speed would probably be scrubbed off by the high speed in the slipstream. It'd be much harder to stay close. I mean, the original sort of layout, I think it is I don't know, you'd be able to help me on this, if it's the layout they use for the MotoGP. They definitely use the final where the chicane is, but for turn 10, where they've got the sort of tight left-hander, that's kind of like there is obviously the outside loop around that. And then the original plan for the track is to sort of, I think it was the original track, is to loop round, then loop all the way onto the straight. And as a track, that looks really quite fun, very go-kart. But and very similar to other tracks built around that time in the late 80s. So that would probably be more fun to see, but that just would lend itself to cars just getting spread out again.
Even more. Yeah.
So I think everyone can sit there and say, oh, the chicane's awful. And yeah, it does look pretty awful. And I think the majority of the people pipe up with this just because they've played it on the F1 game and it's a bit of a class. But I just think as a final sector, it does actually offer a bit of a different challenge to the rest of the track. Otherwise, it is just a faster end to the track. Whereas we were seeing the final sector being where all the mistakes were made in qualifying, being the difference between the races. So I think I'm not as perturbed by it as others are, but it does look a bit clumsy.
Okay. Well, if I could have it my way, I would make the F1 cars use the rallycross circuit, which is kind of like in the final sector, but not quite.
A good little rallycross track, that.
It is, yeah. We started going there a few years ago, and I quite like it.
Spa's got a good rallycross track.
Oh,
go up through Eau Rouge and
last
Radion.
year was brilliant.
Not Radion, just Eau Rouge, and then just go out to they go out through the fan zone of the Formula One race, and bring it out around there, and that's really cool.
Rallycross resumes next weekend, but we're not going to talk about Rallycross. We're talking about F1. In 4th and 5th were Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez, the Racing Points, picking up more points. I think that puts them in 3rd. Yes, it does. It puts them in 3rd place, even with the 15 points penalty that they got for, having
all of that jazz.
Stuff, but I'm not going to get into that. They're 1 point ahead of McLaren, and McLaren are 1 point ahead of Ferrari, Renault.
That's interesting. That's very close.
So, 3rd, 4th, and 5th are very close. So, I've got a question for you. Who do you think will come out in 3rd place by the time we get to the final race? Racing Point, McLaren, or Ferrari?
Racing Point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easily?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why is that?
They finished 4th and 5th. Easily.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I mean, we've spoken about the characteristics of the track being sort of cookie cutter F1, where you get your this is a traditional bit of track, this traditional bit of track, put it together. It's got a bit of everything, and that is obviously why it's a fantastic testing circuit. But it's why the Racing Point is such a good car, is because it's a beautiful compromise, which is what Formula One needs to be. A Formula One car needs to be the beautiful compromise, whereas McLaren is seeming to only lend itself to certain tracks. It was a bit off in Hungary, and it's been a bit off here, but it's been on the money in Silverstone in Austria. So I think the next few races will be very good for McLaren, not Ferrari. They're the rivals there, and I think the majority of the races from this sort of truncated calendar we've got at the moment seem to lend themselves to the compromise car seem to lend themselves to the McLaren more than the Ferrari, but then Racing Point works on both of their strong tracks. So I think it's going to be interesting to see for 4th and 5th and 6th, with Renault presumably coming into a fight there as well. But I think it'll go Racing Point, McLaren, Ferrari being very close together.
Yeah, I'd agree. Well. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think unless Racing Point get a further penalty deduction or something from the court stuff that's going to happen, I think they've got a 3rd place, which is great for them, really.
Unless Jean Todt goes with his old employers in the appeal process, which presumably won't be for a long time. I'm not sure how long when the next WMSC meeting is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it's not till mid-September.
Yeah. Carlos Sainz had a good race today. 6th place in the McLaren. I thought McLaren was struggling, but they seem to come back in the races as they always do. I think Sainz...
what I just said.
Yeah. Sainz did a soft, medium strategy, which was a bit different because not many drivers use 2 sets of softs. He always goes round. He always goes well round at his own circuit, doesn't he?
Yeah, he equalled his best finish there today, which I sort of thought maybe he got a 5th there at some point, but he obviously hasn't. And yeah, he drove very well. He did what he needed to do. McLaren really mastered the second pit stop undercut, because I think that was more by luck rather than judgment, having gone onto the softs in the second stint, which I was a bit surprised about with McLaren, but they did it with Norris as well, and it worked out pretty well for them. I think they were forced then to pit a bit earlier, and that allowed Sainz to just pummel in some good laps on his fresh mediums, and that really worked for him.
Yeah, it was an aggressive strategy that paid off. Lando Norris, I think he had a bit of a bad start, which isn't helping when the midfield is so close. You can't afford to be dropping 2 or 3 positions on the first lap.
No.
Shall we talk about Alexander Albon then? He was in that midfield scrap.
I think I should take the lead on this, because you have been citing all over different social media. On our little Facebook group just before this, Nigel alluded to his obligatory Albon rant. He did so yesterday evening on Twitter as well. I'm sure there'll be an Instagram story at some point in which Nigel throws a dart at Alex Albon in his cupboard door.
I like Albon. I do like him. I just don't think he deserves to be in the Red Bull seat. That's all. Yeah. That's all it is. I think, So anyone who thinks I hate him, I don't. I promise. He just doesn't deserve to be in that seat. Shall I carry on?
Carry on. Give us some bases, Nige.
So I was looking at some stats, as Freddie knows, and in the 15 races Verstappen and Albon have had together, Albon has only once qualified within 4 tenths of Verstappen, and 4 tenths already is a lot. That was at Japan, which he actually got the equal time. Japan, first time to qualify to do the same time as Verstappen is excellent. But that was just once, and since then he hasn't done it. And before that, he didn't do it either. And for me, to be was it 6-7 tenths behind he was in qualifying at the weekend? Yeah, on a track that everyone knows, that you've got all the knowledge, to be that far behind is just not good enough. And we've seen all season in qualifying, he just does not have the pace. And it's easy to say, yes, he just needs to improve his qualifying. But the problem is, he doesn't look like he's going to do that. And that's where my problem is. And his recovery drives are great, but he just should not be in that position. And Red Bull are really losing something by not having a second driver up there to, at least to be within the Mercedes pit window, so then they can hold him up, or so he can hold the Mercs up or something. And it's partly perhaps the car is tricky to drive, because we've seen how well Pierre Gasly is doing in the AlphaTauri, which looks easier to drive, but he's just too far away from me, and I'll be very surprised if Red Bull decide to keep him for 2021, quite frankly. I think
Red Bull he's saved by the fact that Red Bull don't want more of the same with Pierre Gasly, and I think switching the drivers would result in a similar situation to what we had last year with Gasly and what we have now with Albon, which is that Verstappen has got his head around a very difficult car to drive, and the Toro Rosso is a much more friendly car to drive, and that's where Pierre Gasly is showing his extreme talent and his extreme speed in a driver-friendly car. So Albon isn't doing the job, but I think Red Bull have got the pickle of who will do the job. And currently Max Verstappen can, but it seems to be that no one else can in the second seat.
The thing is, a lot of people, you'll see on social media are defending Albon, and I can't help but feel if that was Gasly or Kvyat doing what Albon's doing now, everyone will be saying, "Oh, they shouldn't have the seat." But no one, even I know the team have to defend it, but see, I feel like I've got the unpopular opinion here of saying Albon, shouldn't be in the Red Bull seat. I don't get how you can defend his performances. Not you, Freddie. I'm saying to like the audience.
Yeah, Albon has got the advantage of having had quite a few good recovery drives. Yes, there's a caveat, they're recovery drives, but they're good ones. And he was brought in to be the driver who wouldn't get mired in the quagmire of the midfield. But today he did that. Today he didn't come through to a 4th or 5th position. He was 7th. He did go wheel to wheel with Sainz and couldn't pass him. But yes, this also then has the caveat to that of he was put on the hard tyres very early on, which all of the drivers are saying
that didn't help.
At the end of practice on Friday was the hard tyres are the same as the mediums in terms of pace. They just take longer to heat up. They don't work as nicely in terms of length of time. They're pretty similar to the mediums in terms of length of wear, but they just lack grip. And I don't know whether that's because of practice tyre results for the Red Bull, but they're able to go onto the medium with Verstappen, so presumably they're able to go onto the medium with Albon, and that would have been, from an early pit stop, that would have been he would have then had a bit better pace and would have been able to clear some of the back markers pretty quickly and would have been able to be in contention with the racing points at the end of the race. I think that was a strategy blunder from Red Bull.
Yeah, definitely. But the problem was later on, wasn't it?
Yeah, the problems did also show later on when he was on the medium tyre. And I mean, maybe Albon needs to learn to just dive down the inside of people. Every overtake has been around the outside for Alex Albon. And they're fantastic to watch. But you're always going to get hung out to dry at turn 4 on Catalonia. Always. That's just the normal racing line, normal racecraft line, is to, squeeze them out, and then you've got the perfect line to cut them off on the apex into turn 5. And that's exactly what happened to him. He was squeezed out by Sainz. Sainz is not going to give you any room. You're in his Red Bull seat still, technically. And yeah, I think I'm echoing what you're saying. I think he's a lovely chap. I think Pierre's a lovely chap. I think both of them got a poor luck of the draw with a very difficult car to drive.
Yeah, it's just the best drivers, though.
Exactly, the best drivers can drive the bad cars.
Yeah,
the Alonsos, the Hamiltons, the Verstappens can drive around it.
But I feel even someone like a Perez or a Hulkenberg, they wouldn't be 7 tenths behind in qualifying. I think it'd be more like 3 or 4, and that's the thing for me.
This lends itself to the arguments for and against the Red Bull driver program, which is, yes, I think they would be better, and I think they would be better because those kind of drivers have got 10 years plus experience of Formula One cars. Albon didn't drive a Formula One car till February last year. Gasly was in his second full season when he was in the Red Bull. So these guys haven't had a lot of time to really accustom to Formula One, and then are thrust into a difficult car to drive from what we've seen, and have got to do the job at such a level against their teammate. We don't know where they would be if they were put against 2016 level Ricciardo, for instance.
No.
We don't know how much Verstappen is different in comparison to how he was in the past and how much he's potentially grown. because it'd be interesting to see how good Ricciardo would be in that car currently, because he was able to hold a candle to Verstappen, but in his 2018 season, from Monaco onwards, he was out qualified all but like once or twice. So Verstappen's just Verstappen.
Yeah, I'm just worried with this. It's difficult to drive, story, but is it really that difficult? Because we don't hear much on the radio from Albon saying, "Oh, it's this horrible," or the balance is all over the place already. We don't hear much of that. So is it possible?
Getting a bit in the practice sessions, but I think with this weekend, I think there is a potential that the TV director is trying to move the story on. It's just like, no, we always hear the same messages from Alex Albon. Can't be bothered with this anymore. Let's go and listen to Verstappen's team radio instead. I don't know, but there is always potential for that because they're listening to the radio to 20 drivers consistently. So, but I don't know. There are arguments on both sides, but the arguments in favour of a new driver in that Red Bull seat getting the call up, or just getting the outside cherry pick, I think is the best answer for Red Bull.
Yeah, because at the moment, Red Bull effectively have one Red Bull driver and 3 Alpha Tauris. It looks like, really.
Completely, yeah. Kvyat is in the pocket of Gasly. Albon in his first term, pretty much, of Formula One, his first half season, was getting the upper side of Kvyat, pretty much. Kvyat definitely had the experience on his side that was kind of, in comparison to Albon, which showed Albon's entry was very, very good to Formula One. So they've got a fantastic team in Gasly and Albon if they were partnered.
Yeah.
Kvyat is sort of the bottom rung of this, but there's a middleman they're missing. And I think Carlos Sainz would have been very good in that Red Bull seat, but obviously the momentum was never there with Sainz in Red Bull.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on Albon is I don't know if he's doing better than what Gasly was doing. I know a few races ago we were saying, yeah, he's doing better than what Gasly's doing, but Gasly in qualifying was much better than what Albon's doing at the moment, I'd say. Yeah. I know in the races he might not have the racecraft, but in terms of raw pace, I would say Gasly did a slightly better job than Albon, and people might not, like that opinion, but for me, that's the way it is. So, yeah. But do you agree? Do you think Gasly did a better job? Sorry, Albon is doing a better job than what Gasly did?
I think it's more of the same. The races where the points are. Yeah. Albon's points tally, I think, this year is probably no different to what Gasly's would have been this year. But Albon, yeah, he is attempting to make the progress that Gasly did not have the confidence to do when he was in that seat. Albon seems to have the confidence to try a bit more than Gasly did. Gasly has the confidence in the AlphaTauri, and that's great. But the AlphaTauri isn't the Red Bull. And you need the confidence on that Red Bull, which Gasly definitely didn't have in race trim.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
There we go. It's a really, really tough debate, and it was very hard to call this time last year as well. And I think if both of them were, partners in AlphaTauri, that team would be doing fantastically. We'd be singing their praises all the time. It's just a case
we get to see
both promoted too early. I mean, even if Gasly had spent 3 seasons in AlphaTauri, I feel a bit tentative about promoting him after what we've seen now with these kind of guys. I think they are. I don't know who they would go for. I really don't know who they can go for.
That's the thing.
Go for a Hulkenberg? Do they try and give a big money move to Antonio Felix da Costa? What can they do?
If we didn't know how bad Gasly was last year, we would all be saying, let's put him straight into Red Bull. 100%.
Completely.
So
You're
I
completely
feel
right. If Kvyat was beating Gasly now, relatively consistently, if there was because they are very close in the races. The only thing holding Kvyat back today was a 5-second penalty at the end. So I think the only thing that if Kvyat was consistent with Gasly now, then we'd be saying put Kvyat in the seat. We'd say give him another go. Why not? You've licked your wounds and suffered your blushes of bringing him back into the fold 2 or 3 times. Why not put him up in the Red Bull seat and that kind of thing? But it's just the narrative is with Alex Albon. He's the lovely young chap who's come up. He's got an Instagram account for his cats. He's just he's the kind of guy you just want to say bless him to all the time. And he's not quite. I don't know. It's just they're both
can't
great.
Keep doing that.
You can't keep going. Oh, but he's a nice guy. Oh, but he's a nice guy. Because that's when you fall into another argument about Ferrari and Sebastian Vettel. When Sebastian Vettel has been clearly underperforming quite a few times, and you'd say Ferrari sack him if he was Antonio Giovinazzi in an Alfa Romeo. So this is more of a rant about the changing fate of F1 Twitter, but
yeah,
let's attack that.
Yeah,
This will be the last episode of the podcast.
I always seem to have different opinions to most people on the F1 Twitter, it seems, but yeah.
That's fun. Twitter's opinions, substantiated opinions drive debate, and we're having a brilliant debate here, and yeah, we're getting to English literature.
Yeah, we'll see if Albon can see out the season. I'm starting to have my doubts, but yeah, we'll see what happens, because obviously this time last year, Gasly got the sack, so hopefully it doesn't happen for Albon this year, but we'll see. Yeah, where did he finish today, Albon? I don't even know. He finished eighth.
Eighth. Vettel was seventh, wasn't he?
Yeah. Speaking of Vettel, we got some good points. Made the one-stop strategy work, which I thought was crazy to do medium. Then
he did 37 laps on soft tyres. 37 laps. Wow. I mean, he could have probably been mad. He probably would have lasted a 36th lap, a 38th lap if he wasn't lapped. But it was helpful that he was. But Vettel, yeah, he won driver of the day. It was a fantastic performance, and it's a drive that the experience on those tyres rewards. So, I mean, he had the tyre choice of starting at 11th.
Yeah, that helped.
Yeah. I think the only negative was very plain to see, which was sort of a Ferrari a bit clueless as to what we're going to do with Vettel. We've started him on the mediums. We've kind of got to go onto the soft because the hards aren't very good. Maybe we'll go onto the mediums again. Oh well. And then Leclerc had some issues, and their attention was focused on that, but their attention never seems to return to Vettel. And Vettel just decided to drive as he normally would in that kind of phase of a race, assuming that there was going to be a second pit stop in probably about 10 laps time. And then he had to extend that to 20 laps time when he got to come in. So Vettel did very well to do that. He didn't put up much of a fight when he was overtaken by Stroll and presumably, I think, Sainz as well. He just did what he did, and that worked out for him. And I think, kudos to him. He needed a performance like that.
Yeah, definitely. And Leclerc, his engine cut out, which caused him to spin. It was like someone pulled a handbrake on his car. And I'm not sure what position he would have been on for, because Leclerc struggled to get past Norris, didn't he? So he didn't really get the best strategy.
I think if Leclerc hadn't had his electrical issues, then Ferrari wouldn't have scored a point. Maybe Leclerc would have got 10th, but they wouldn't have tried something different with Vettel, because they would just gone for a plain strategy, because they wouldn't have got a little bit riled up with anything. They would have just gone, okay, cool, now we'll pit Seb because we've got 2 cars in the race. When it became all or nothing, pretty much, then they thought, why don't we leave Sebastian out? And so they did. And that yielded them 7th place, and which at a time was a net 4th when Perez got his penalty. So it was the right idea to leave Seb out. And I think just the mindset was only there because Charles Leclerc had his issues.
Yeah, I feel if Leclerc stayed in the race and Ferrari went for a one stop, I don't think they would have, but if they did, I think 4th or 5th would have been on the cards for Ferrari today. So it's a shame Leclerc had that spin. But yeah, the relationship between Vettel and Ferrari is in absolute bits, to say the least.
Unfortunately,
what on earth is going to be on? What on earth is going to be on going on behind the scenes? Who knows? But yeah, there are reports that Vettel has signed for Aston Martin for 15 million. For some Italian media saying that's still nothing confirmed, but we could hear something within the next few weeks, perhaps, with Vettel.
There's been lots of news in the European press this weekend. We've got that headline. I think there's some rumours of Turkey and Jerez coming into play. There are there's another one that I can't remember. I think there's always been all this. There's always stuff about Kimi Räikkönen nowadays, and yeah, it's just there's a lot you can take with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, well, we'll find out soon what happens with Sebastian Vettel. It was a bad weekend for Renault. Really, they were at the back end of the midfield battle. They couldn't do an alternative strategy. I think both drivers tried a one stop. Is that right? I'm not 100% sure, but either way, they didn't really have the pace.
No, they didn't really have pace this weekend. They didn't quite get out of Q2. Ocon was behind an Alfa Romeo in qualifying, which no offense to Alfa Romeo, but that was a stellar lap from Kimi Räikkönen, and he said he could go faster because he had to do. I think he said he did that lap on old tyres.
Wow.
So top job, mate. So Ricciardo went 30 laps on soft tyres and was a second outside the points, and my app has just shut down, so I can't see what Ocon did. So let's assume he did the opposite of that and did a very long stint on soft tyres, and then went and did a very long stint on mediums, and then he did exactly that. Did a very long stint on mediums, then a long stint on softs, and finished 13th, just behind Kvyat. So it was about 10 seconds covering them at the end, which is good on race pace for the two of them. Ocon's getting a bit better with it. He had his return to racing hiccups on pace, but he seems to be getting back there, I think. And yeah, not the weekend we expected from Renault, really. They had a few decent times in practice, but that was it.
Yeah, and this circuit as well, because it's got so many different sections of the track: high speed, medium speed, and low speed at the end. It doesn't bode well for the rest of the season.
No.
With the car they have. If it's struggling at this circuit, then it will probably struggle at other circuits, which is a big shame, because at Silverstone, Renault looks really good, but for some reason it didn't work. But
it's not a car you would necessarily have thought would be a high-speed car, but then both the Renault-powered cars and the McLaren as well are good in the high-speed tracks. So
yeah, and then it was the usual trio of teams at the back: Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Williams. There's not really too much to say about them. I saw Romain Grosjean had another ridiculously late defence on Kimi Räikkönen in the latter stages of the race. I mean, Grosjean, what is he? We've discussed this before in length in the first Silverstone race, I think it was.
Yeah, it was
after the race. Yeah, and I think we all agreed that those types of moves just have to be ironed out, because one day there's going to be a huge accident.
Yeah, completely. There will be a huge accident if that carries on. Kimi Räikkönen, he was incensed on the radio, and he's one that's quite shouty normally, but he was very, 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 very cheesed off at that. I'm trying to think of a clean way to say that. And he, it's just uncomfortable to watch that kind of defence. There are a few of them in the junior category races this weekend as well. I'm trying to think who it was. I think it was I can't remember. So in the F3 race, there were quite a few sort of late, darty defensive moves.
Yeah, it's a young driver thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the last few years we've seen it. Other drivers, 12, 13, a few years ago would have seen it. Oh, right, you can do that. And now the 16, 17 in F3, F2, F4, whatever, they're doing the same things. And that's what that's what I'm worried about, because this is here to stay, I think.
It's a video game move.
Yeah.
It's not a racetrack move. It's not a respectful move on the racetrack. And we've got the Indy 500 coming up, the actual race coming up next week, and there was such a massive stir in the break about the virtual Indy 500 race with Lando Norris and Simon Pagenaud. Simon Pagenaud taking out Lando Norris and stuff, but because Pagenaud thought that Norris had just gone for such a stupid move and put him out of the race in the first place, that was the impetus. And the move Norris did, you just wouldn't do at Indy. It's that kind of thing. These drivers are driving with the respect that they've learned. Indianapolis is somewhere, if you do something stupid or go for something stupid, people's lives are at risk. And drivers seem to, even with such serious incidents happening in recent years, there seems to be such an invincibility that it's scary to see these kind of moves. It is scary. And it's scary they're coming up through the ranks, because we know that drivers set examples to younger drivers. And we've seen that with Schumacher coming through. I think he's the prime example. So many famous incidents of Schumacher, his Damon Hill clash, his Jacques Villeneuve clash for the championships, where he just turned in and then took one title, was disqualified from another. And he's obviously picked that up from Prost just not turning in Suzuka 89, and Senna just deliberately nerfing Prost the year after. He's picked that up from these drivers thinking they're invincible, and that's just not on. It's got, all this stuff has a legacy. All these champions, all these drivers who are respected and have had long Formula One careers still doing this I'm repeating myself by saying it's not on. We've had debates about this before, but yeah, it's not comfortable viewing.
What's just as scary is that nothing is being done about it, nothing at all. And I find that kind of mad, really, that the FIA and the stewards are allowing this. I mean, how can they be allowing this? I really don't know. But yeah, nothing gets said.
It's filtering over to Formula E as well. Nick de Vries was was very uncomfortable in some of his defence there. Yeah, it's lower speed, but not Jacques Villeneuve, Lucas di Grassi. That's an interesting comparison. You can choose what you want to choose of that Freudian slip. But Lucas di Grassi, some of his defensive moves in the Formula E races was for those of you
he was attacking, wasn't he?
yeah. He was the first corner at the
Berlin.
Two of the layouts in the Berlin track was really quite a long sweeping corner, and de Grassi would go to the outside of a driver, and then he would get sort of half a car ahead, and then basically try to scare them out and by turning in and squeezing them. And one time he spun round because the car didn't go out of the way, and the other time he tried to do it a bit early on Robin Freins, and they just bashed into each other. And it's putting your car in harm's way and forcing other people to have accidents, and that results in a lot of accidents actually. And this kind of thing, and then Nick de Vries would just dart it up the inside of people or just drive across people in the braking zone. And it's just, he got a bit of a nickname of Nick Debris for that kind of thing. And that's not, Nick de Vries is a better driver than racing like that. And it's uncomfortable viewing in anything you watch.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. There's not much to say on Williams and Haas and Alfa, unfortunately. So
Nicholas Latifi's pace was good this weekend. His quality lap just
didn't really
hook
improving.
It up. But he's got a good upwards curve. And at one point, I looked at the timing tower, and he was about 20 seconds off the back, and I was like, oh no, Nicky. But then he came through, and I think he was only a few seconds off Russell at the end. He was just lapped a second time, so he got to finish earlier. That was it. But yeah, Latifi he's doing well. I think it's only a matter of time before he does actually out-qualify Russell towards the end of the season. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we've summed it all up there in the last 45 minutes or so. That was everything that happened at the Spanish Grand Prix. So, yeah. Freddie, is there anything else that I've missed out or or not really.
I think another big topic to sort of come out from this weekend was the Toto Wolff feature story, which seems to be that Toto is underway with a bit of sort of reflection of his position. Does he want to have such a hands-on role in the team? Does he want to sort of with Andy Cowell in the performance powertrains department? They have he's taken a step back. He's going into a bit more of a I think more a corporate, more road car kind of role with Daimler, and they've had to split his role into 5 people. Are they thinking of Toto Wolff taking a step back, taking a bit more of a balanced corporate role, that kind of thing, with a few other people? I think there's a few discussions being had in Mercedes and in Daimler right now to sort of discuss what's going on with this. And they did try out as early as Brazil last year. They tried out Toto Wolff not being at an event, and it was slightly compounded by the first Formula E race for Mercedes, but that was also a trial run to see what can Mercedes do without Toto Wolff. So
yeah, they didn't win.
They didn't win. No,
Hockenheim. They didn't. Oh no, he was there at Hockenheim.
He was up there at Hockenheim.
I don't know why.
There's a whole Netflix documentary about that.
The Toto Wolff talks have been going on for quite a while, really, the last few months, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think he will stay.
I think he'll stay.
His role might just change. He might go into the role Niki Lauda had before he sadly passed away. Yeah, that's something I could see. Mm-hmm. But
the rumours won't go away, and that's just because there's nothing on paper. But he's already etched into the history of the sport. Does he want to go out on a high? I wouldn't be surprised. That was kind of sort of a perspective with Jean Tots, Schumacher, and Ross Brawn at Ferrari in 15 years ago. So there could be that. There also have been some rumours. These are very stretchy rumours that Sebastian Vettel could be out by Monza or Spa, and Nico Hülkenberg could be in the car.
Yeah.
At Ferrari, just because of the
relationship.
The relationship between Vettel and his superiors.
Well, I mean, that would be interesting because surely Ferrari would have to pay out Vettel to do that. And the reason they got rid of Vettel, the reason they got rid of Vettel was because of the coronavirus. They couldn't afford to keep him. That's what I thought Ferrari said anyway. But turns out maybe not. But yeah, that'll be an interesting one. But before we go, just remind me, Freddie, where can our viewers watch us and listen to us? Because I can't quite remember you, so you're gonna have to remind me.
I can't remember, Nigel. Have you not been paying attention to the end of every podcast?
Not quite.
Oh, well, here goes. So you can watch a video version of this if you're not on YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel, Wing It F1 Podcast. We've got the back catalogue, obviously, of all our podcasts there. If you want to go back in time, if you want to watch our sort of 70th anniversary special where we talk about our favourite moments of Formula One. You've got our Twitter account, which is Wing It F1 on Twitter, and you can get links there to everything. We've got our website on Acast, which is going to be read out to you by me, which is shows.acast.com/winging it F1 podcast, which is obviously easy to type in. So go and do that and get to our website, and you can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. We're working on Google Play, so you Android users can listen to us. So yeah, there's more to the Android. Well, what's Nigel been listening to? Who knows? So us iPhone users can. But anyway, so yeah, that's where you can find us, dear fan.
Yes, and me and Freddie will be back, hopefully with a third guest, since Adam is not here, later in the week. So yeah, we'll see you for that. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.